Hey guys, so today this video is just going to be a guide into how to hardwire things like dash cams, car infotainment screens, etc. into your car so that you don't get any of this mess. This is my sister's car. As you can see, it's just a wiring mess. You've got the wiring from the infotainment, you've got wiring for the dash cam, you've got wiring for the Bluetooth, all coming into this single cigarette socket, and it really just makes the entire car look like a mess. Essentially what I'm going to be doing is rerouting all of this so it's hidden by piggybacking off of the existing cigarette fuse. So let's get straight into it. These are the three things essentially you're going to need. You're going to need a piggyback fuse wire. So this comes in various sizes. You can get a standard, a micro and a mini, I believe. Just make sure before you go ahead and buy, have a look at your car and maybe get a fuse diagram for your car, and then you'll be able to see exactly what fuse you need, and then you can buy the corresponding tap for it. You're also going to need this. So essentially what we're doing is creating a new cigarette lighter socket location. So we're just creating an additional one. So this is that basically. It's just an additional socket with wiring and a inline fuse as well. These are pretty inexpensive, similar to the piggyback fuses. And this would essentially go into there and feed off of the cigarette lighter power. So, or the existing cigarette lighter power. It all makes sense when we get into it. But you're going to need one of these, one of this, and essentially just pry tools. If you have a Dashcam hardwiring kit already at hand, you might have this, and these. But essentially, we're just going to be needing these in order to pry a lot of the interior panels, etc., and make life a bit easier without any damage when compared to a screwdriver. So let's get started. So the car I'll be working on is an Audi TT Mark II. So use this as a guide, but just make sure you do a bit of research into your own car because things might vary slightly. For example, what number the fuse is or where the fuse is located. But generally, in most cars, especially German cars, the fuses are located in the same enough areas. I've worked on Vauxhalls, and again, it's been in and around the same kind of areas, just near the glove box or near the driver's side steering wheel. So generally the locations are the same, but if you do find that your car doesn't, the location of the fuse isn't there, then either leave a comment below and I'll try and help you, or just go on forums and someone should have a diagram of exactly where the fuses in your car are and what those fuses mean. Also, just worthy as well, when you do open panels, sometimes there is a fuse diagram that the manufacturer has left, so you can use that to identify what fuse you need to tap into. So for a Audi TT Mark II, you'll find the fuses that we will be tapping into behind this panel. So this panel here, you can see, provides a brief description of what each fuse is, as well as a diagram here of how it's been numbered. So this is quite useful. They've also provided a fuse removal tool, but manufacturers vary. I haven't seen this in all the cars I've worked on, but just in case, this is quite helpful. But these are the fuses in question. So in our case, we need to find cigarette ports. So cigarette lighters, sorry. So if we go here, you can see number 38, 20 amp cigarette lighter fuse. So number 28 on this diagram, if I just zoom out again, zoom back in, is just there. Trying to center it. So we need to find the corresponding fuse from this diagram, and that's the one that we'll be tapping into. So the corresponding fuse is actually right don't know why it's refusing to focus, but just this one right here. That is number 38. They've actually numbered it as well, so I'm not sure if you can see. You can see inside the numbers of each fuse that correspond to the diagram here. So number 38, 20 amp cigarette lighter fuse is actually this one right here. Best way to double check is with a multimeter, but also you can see that the surrounding fuses, so the next one's a 5, the next one's a 10, and if we go to the diagram focus on, you can see the CAN gateway is a 5 amp and the engine control unit is a 10 amp. So we know that that is generally going to be the right one, as well as obviously using the diagram as well. Okay, next step is to connect all your wires together. So connect your socket wire to your fuse tap, and then what you're going to do is simply get your where is it, remover tool, go to your fuse and pull it out like so, and then what you're going to do, it's hard to do this one-handed so apologies, is you're going to want to put that fuse that you just took out into the socket which is, hold on, okay, into the socket which is closest to the prongs. So essentially there's two circuits that are running, and you want to make sure that the circuit that you're adding is fused correctly and the circuit that you're piggybacking off of is fused correctly. In order to ensure that, the fuse that I've taken out from the existing hole, I'm just going to simply push like that into the new one. And so now you can see it's a 20 amp. I'm actually going to replace this 5 amp to a 10 amp, but the 5 amp should be sufficient. You can probably even reduce this further to 3 amps if you're just installing a dash cam. With this, because I'm going to be running a few various different devices, I'm just going to ump this up to a 10 amp, just to prevent any issues further down the line. Right, so I've just now replaced the 5 amp that comes with the fuse tab with a 10 amp fuse. You don't need to do this, but I'm just doing it just because I'm running more accessories, so just bear in mind the number of accessories you're going to be running and what fuse you should be inserting to protect your circuit. So in order to test what fuses you can actually use to make sure it's a switch live, what you're going to do is get a multimeter and switch it to DC voltage, and then you're going to get your probe, put it on ground and touch the top of the fuses, and as you can see on the multimeter it goes to 12 volts. So right now I don't actually have the ignition even on, so the keys are out. So the initial fuse which I thought I could use, the cigarette fuse, is actually live. Hold on. Yeah, there we are. It's live even though the keys are out. So I can't actually use this. I believe there might be an internal switch for the cigarette sockets, which is how that works. So I've gone around and tested, and I can see there's 2 empty slots here, and if I prod my probe in, you can see that that's 0, and if I move to the next one, it's also 0. But if I put the keys in, turn the ignition on, and I prod in, you can see 12 volts is drawn on both sockets. So essentially I can use either socket to piggyback off of, or essentially just connect to. So it's worth getting one of these, because even if the fuse diagram says that it's a cigarette socket, it might be wired slightly differently so that these are still live, and we want to make sure that those aren't live when the ignition is out. So I've now connected the ground wire to a metal frame. So this frame connects to the glove box and what holds the glove box and the whole dash in place. I've just unscrewed this bolt, feeded the O-ring the nut through the O-ring, and just bolted it back up. So now the ground is connected. I've got all my wiring here, and what I'm going to do now is just plug the piggyback in to the correct socket, the slot, sorry. But before you do that, you want to make sure you know what the hot side and cold side is. So essentially I have this diagram to hand as well. This shows what the hot side and cold side is. So here, this is your hot and that's your return. You can see, as I was talking about earlier, you want your new fuse to be here and your old fuse to be here. Since I'm putting in an empty slot, I don't have an original fuse, it's just a new one. But that's my hot, and I want to make sure that I place this hot in the hot side of the socket. And the best way to test that is to get your multimeter, touch ground, touch top. Oh, let me turn the ignition on. Touch hot. And you can see voltage is 12. If I touch the bottom now, you can see that voltage is 0. So that's the best way to tell what is the hot and what is the cold side. So now we know in the Audi TT anyway, top is hot. If I get my diagram back up, match it back here, so that's my hot. So I need to put this in like so. Well, let me turn the ignition off just right there. I'm just going to push this. If I can get it in. Oh, just gonna clearance issues, but I think that's in now. And that's it. So now I've placed the fuse or the tap in. Let's just test the best way to do it. You can see keys are out, this screen isn't on. If I then put the keys in, turn in the ignition on, the screen now turns on. So, and then obviously the best test as well, if you show the screen, if I now switch the ignition off, screen turns off. So now we know that it's switched live and it's a good fuse. So now it's just, sorry about the background noise, now it's just a case of tidying all the wires up, and I'll get back to you after that. Right, okay, so I've now just pushed a lot of the wiring into this crevice here. I've got the cigarette socket or the USB socket all basically pushed in, and everything now works, and it's just a case of putting the panel back on, and that's it. Panel is now back on. You can see none of the wires showing. I've tucked everything underneath, so no wiring until right at the end when it comes up. Ignore this wire. This wire is actually, oh sorry, this wire is actually an aux cord. But you can see the wiring that I installed comes up here and then comes straight into the head unit itself. It's quite difficult to hide all of it. I might improve it with some cable adhesives so that it's less obvious. But yeah,